Cashamaniacs.
Geo Gearheads.
Welcome back to Geo Gearheads, episode 441. I'm Daryl WB4, back as usual with Chris of the Northwest.
Daryl, how are you doing this week?
I'm apparently kind of hyped up because I just feel like I got to run through and do voiceovers.
That's right, because you got to do the voiceovers fast because Starbucks has started opening up, and now we can get our caffeine on a more regular basis, and it makes us talk just a little bit faster. But maybe nobody will notice.
Well, see, I actually just before we did this, sat down to do this show, I was recording some voiceovers for some videos at work.
Oh.
So I'm literally in that mode. It's like, okay, lights are on. Now it's time to go.
The lights are on. The box is locked.
Yeah.
You know where?
But we've got a great show tonight.
I know where that's from. Okay, go ahead.
I know that reference, but I can't think of where it's from, actually.
I know. You will.
Oh.
You'll get it.
I'll get it like as soon as we hang up. Yeah. Isn't that always the case?
Yeah.
But we do have a great show tonight because one of our favorite developers of one of our favorite iOS apps is back on the show. Welcome, Nick. We're glad to have you back on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And we're glad to have a new version of Cashly to play with.
Yes.
I'm glad to finally have released it.
I was going to say, we're probably nowhere near as glad as you are to finally get it out the door.
Yes, very much so.
That's always one of those nasty things. It's rewarding, but it's like, finally, it's out the door. And then the 2 or 3 weeks of fixing those little problems that no one found in beta testing.
Exactly. And it's always surprising the ones that they do find.
Yeah, it's like, no matter how much you beta test anything, you will always find bugs when it goes public.
Yes.
Well, Nick, that brings up a great question. How long have you been working on this version of Cashly?
Oh boy. Probably 6 months or 8 months, something like that. I should have written down when I started on it, but it had some scope creep and new features were added, and then the unfortunate COVID thing happened, and so I waited longer to release it. And yeah, it took much longer than I had hoped. And I even had told my beta testers, I'm going to do a small release with just a few features and, be a short release cycle. And it didn't happen. So.
See, the correct answer would have is it took you 6 years to get to this version of Cashly.
It's true. I should have said that.
Yeah.
I've always been thinking about this version of Cashly. Now the next one. I'm already
and version 7 was already in the works 6 years ago as well.
That's true. It's true. It's building blocks.
But yeah, it is a great new version. But to be honest, I don't see a lot of change, which is a good thing because I go in and I know exactly what I'm doing, at least for the most part. It's not like anything has changed so much that I'm lost.
That's true. It's no radical design changes, no radical changes with interfaces, just enhanced features here and there. So it's good for users that don't like things messed up.
Yeah. And how much time do a lot of us have to go caching? I mean, right now, most of us probably have a lot more time to go caching, but we don't necessarily have the time to go and learn a whole new program.
That's true.
And I did take a look at the headlines of what's new. And of course, the one that I found to be the number one was 4th or 5th on the list.
What was that?
The TB scanning.
Got it. Yeah, that was a feature that took a long time to build. And I did put it at the top of the feature list on the blog. But yeah, it depends on the user who's going to use it or not. And some people might use it, some people might not.
Yeah, Francis says that he loves the TB scanning feature.
Wonderful.
And I do as well.
I've used it on a lot of different environments. Of course, the back of cars, the logos, the TBs there are usually quite different in what do I want to say? The colors are opposite. You get a contrast. You get a lot of contrast on those, so those are easy. But I've done it on some shiny coins, where the TB field there, the blank space is shiny too, and it works well. So
yeah, you just got to get on the right angle, and then it does pretty well with the scanning.
Houston Texas Dave, sorry, says that the TV scan is great, which I'm assuming he means, for like getting the TVs out of YouTube videos. No, he meant TV. He corrected it later. But there's a new feature for you. You need the TV scan so that people can grab those YouTube tracking numbers easier.
I was thinking like TV scan with the old like tube TVs.
Yeah, the scan rates. Yeah. But it uses those scan rates to perfectly pick up the TB numbers and OCR them properly. Got it. Yeah. I have no idea if that would actually help or not.
I don't know.
I did do several actually right off of C. Michelle's videos, and most of them worked pretty well. The only problem I really had with the trackables in C. Michelle's videos were zeros being read as O's.
Yeah, that's the problem that I had as well in testing. So that's probably the most difficult thing about the OCR text.
Yeah, and I know someone was saying that they were probably TB scan. They were actually hitting up the API to check the number, and if it failed, they were substituting or something like that.
Yeah, I think TV scan sends a request to see if it's valid or not. Cachly doesn't do that right away because I wanted speed so people could scan a bunch of them, save them as pending logs. So I'm not making that extra call.
Well, and yours does it all on the device as well, correct?
Yes.
So in theory, you don't even need an internet connection, so it would work going out to middle of BFE.
Yeah.
Or any mega.
Yeah, you can just save those all offline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I need to play with more that I haven't had a chance to dig into are the text templates on those, because I really got to get the I noticed that there's an option to mark it that way, but I have not used it at all. But that is going to be so handy to have a few of those standardized that I can drop in there.
Yeah, that was another much requested feature to match what regular logs had. So that addition was something that I think a lot of people appreciate.
Definitely. But Team Demp seems to disagree with me and says that the most important feature is the state restoration.
That is true. This is one of my beta testers mentioning this. This is the biggest feature that nobody will notice. I keep on saying this.
I was just going to say, I would have to actually agree. It's not one of those headline features, but this is one of those things that under the hood is going to save me so many hours.
Exactly. It's almost every single screen was touched, had to recode things to restore the state on almost every screen in the whole app. So now that users are used to it or will be used to it, they probably won't even remember how it used to function. So, and previously it would basically just be like a reset every time. You'd go back to the live tab and do a new search where you are. And I actually think some users got used to that. And then when this came along, they were a little confused why that wasn't happening.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Well, and go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I was going to say, why am I not scanning for new caches all the time?
Yeah. Well, and to give everyone a example of what used to happen to me every time, anytime I went and used the camera, it would quit almost any other background task.
Yeah.
So I do the next cache that I want to hit, get it prepped. I'll go and send the parking cords to, whatever app I decided to use to drive or whatever to the cache. Go and take the picture of the code in that cache that I'm finding so that I have that for my records, and I have to restart and find that cache all over again. Doesn't take me anywhere to, so especially when you're working off of those saved lists, it got to be a little bit tedious.
Yeah, the history screen helped a little bit with that problem until state restoration was introduced. But yeah, you're right. The camera was the most memory hungry app in iOS, I think. And so that was usually the one that would quit caching in the background.
Well, and part of it's, as I understand it, it's not that it's memory hungry so much, but they were pulling some direct memory access that no one else can do.
That could be.
So they have to kill background processes to get the camera to open, and it has to do it that way to get the speed and performance that you expect out of a camera.
Interesting. I actually didn't know that.
That was like iOS 10 or 11, I believe, that they did that. Okay. Going back a little bit, Trent says that beta testing began September 9th of 2019. He looked it up for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trent.
So more than 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. Nice.
So what are some of the other headline features?
Oh, boy. Let's see here.
As we totally changed subjects on you, and you we're prepped to go back to that.
One I used just this weekend was view your friends' logs. So we were out.
Yes.
Wits End and I were out cleaning up the city of Tacoma. Some caches he'd found, some caches I'd found. When we went to find one, it's like, oh, I found this before, but I'm drawing a blank. I have no idea. You know what? I can use Cachely, look at my friends' logs and see who's found it and give them a call. And that's exactly what we did. And we determined the cache is no longer there.
Oh, that's a bummer. But yeah, that was one of the new features that actually HQ added to the API, which was really kind of them. If you have friends that have done the authorization on geocaching.com, which all of your friends should, so that they can show up in third-party apps, then you can see your friends' logs, which is, as Chris said, very helpful in certain situations. So, and you can also view your own logs of a geocache. So if you years ago had DNF'd or wrote a note or something like that on a cache, rather than just scrolling through logs forever to find your own log from that time ago, you can quickly access those as well.
I like how you phrase that. If you have friends.
Yeah, if you have friends.
So for those of us who don't have friends, we're kind of SOL. But the good news is those virtual friends, the ones that you've made through geocaching, they actually do count as friends.
That's true.
Of course they count as friends.
But yeah, it is a really important note that you have to enable the API access. Yeah. And that was a big problem. I think it still is affecting some people that when they turn that on, what was it, about a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all of this stuff broke. And that's why.
Yeah, and it's all to do with privacy laws and things across the world. I wish it was on by default and wasn't off by default. So yeah, it's frustrating, but I think there's more messaging that I could add inside of Cachely to let users know what they need to do to see all of their friends. There is a couple dialogues that let users know, but I think those are quickly dismissed and then they don't see them again. So,
and the trouble is most of those friends that you want to get to that you're not are like CGO users.
Yeah.
Who don't even use the API, so they don't even notice that there's a problem.
Exactly.
And getting the message to them is a little bit more challenging. Ooh,
yeah.
There you go. How about you probably couldn't do this, but how about an email that you could send from Cachely to all of your CGO users that says, look, I know you don't use the API, but please turn this on so I can see you.
That would be a nice feature.
Enough?
Yeah. One of my beta testers had like a block of text that he would just send out to all of his friends. And it actually was quite successful in having them all turn that option on. So
nice. Maybe we should just do an iOS keyboard shortcut, CGO, and then it replaces it with here's how to turn on. No,
it's a great idea.
No, I'm ripping on CGO because they don't use the API, but it is the biggest portion of Android. And because it does not use the API, there's a disconnect in what people expect who use CGO from the people who use the API apps.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if it will just always remain not on the API and kind of it's not addressed by HQ, or I'm sure they've talked to each other about the problem, but I don't know.
And I hear different reports as to what the story is with that one. But the bottom line is it's an open source project. They don't want to deal with the liabilities of an open source project. So the open source guys don't want to deal with the restrictions that HQ would place on them, and HQ doesn't want to deal with the liabilities of the open source project. How much of that is true to what degrees, I don't know.
Yeah, and then how would you deal with the API keys in an open source project for testing?
Exactly.
So,
yeah. So I don't see CGO going API anytime ever, to be honest, and not unless they decide to maybe fork it and have a project that is owned by an entity, because it has to really be owned by an entity.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, I got stuck in the chat comment. Team Demp says that quick map switching is the enhancement he likes the most, or she likes the most. I'm not sure.
That's a he.
He, okay.
Yeah, that is. I can't remember if he's actually the one that suggested this. So this was another suggestion from my beta testers, that it was too slow to tap the map options button, have it pop up, and then find, if you're switching between two maps, say Street View or OpenStreetMaps, and then you want to go to Satellite View, to switch between those when you're at a cache is kind of annoying. So now you can just long press on the map layers button, and it pops up with your 3 recent maps. And so you can just quickly kind of flip between those different ones. And you also get an option for premium offline map options if you're a user of our offline maps.
And that's what I'm going to like most about that is the ability to switch to those offline maps, because I would rather have the online maps until I get into those spotty coverage areas, and then I want to be able to quickly switch. And especially because I didn't do it on a frequent enough basis, it took me a long time to go and find the right one. Yeah,
and even I would go and look at the map list and sit there and scroll down to find, even in testing, which one I needed to switch to, and it's much easier now.
Well, Trent's trying to take credit for nagging you.
I'm happy to give credit to Trent.
Nice.
Gene Eyes wants to know where you turn on the API access for friends.
That is on geocaching.com, and then you need to go to your profile settings, and then there's an authorization screen.
Which I remember doing, a year or two ago, and I don't think I've been to it since.
Yeah, and
we did have an article on it.
Yeah, there was a blog post that I did. Maybe somebody else talked about it, but you yourself and your friends have to do the option. It's not just you can leave it off and then your friends will just appear. You have to also choose to show your friends your log info.
And I'm trying to look that up real quick and see if I can do a screen share just to show people. But in the meantime,
but it's there.
It is in there.
The meantime, one of the things I noticed when I was out caching this weekend, before, I would use Apple Maps because, well, that's the default on the iPhone. It's as good as any. Yeah, none of them are great, but this one's as good as any. When you told it to go navigate via Apple Maps, it would choose like selected location or destination or some generic word there. And now it actually uses the name of the cache that you're going for.
Yes. It's a very small little change, but apparently noticeable by you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of the things I used. I think it was during the gem, the jewel
history at the museum.
Thank you. When I had to use the official app, I was like, well, it does it there, but it doesn't do it in Cachely. Well, it does now. Now there's
was it you that pointed it out to me? Because I thought it was one of my beta testers that mentioned that as well. Like the official app does it.
I think I mentioned it at the Ape event.
Yeah, and then I quickly looked at theirs and figured out, oh, it's possible. So it was a very easy change, but I would have never thought to do it because I had never noticed that was happening. So,
and it's not a big deal, but you can go back and look at your history. And it's like, what was I doing? What were all these places I went to? I don't.
But it's those small little changes that can make an app really satisfying and nice to use if there's just those small little nuanced features.
Exactly.
I'm trying to find that option, and I'll just share my screen anyway, but it is not showing up in authorizations anymore. And I've gone through all of them, and I'm not seeing it. So I think they probably moved it.
Yeah.
I have the device authorizations, app
should be at the very bottom.
Preference
bottom. It's the last. It's the last option.
Well, the last option is allow authorized applications to secure. Oh, that is it. Okay. That is very confusing. So there you go. It's this very last option, allow authorized developer applications, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't look like it's the right one, but it is.
Unfortunately, it's not like it says anything about Cachly. It's just a generic authorization.
Right. But it's not even obvious that does the sharing of the friends activities. It'd be like, please make this a little bit more obvious.
Yeah, I should ask HQ if could be reworded.
Just for Cachly?
Well, it could be.
Let this be used for Cachly's friends.
For everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we found it. Meanwhile, Houston, Texas Dave says he appreciates all that you have done in Cachly 6.0.
Thank you. That's very kind.
But apparently he doesn't appreciate the bug fixes in .1.
There was a couple in there.
Yeah, I'm just in a snarky mood. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I know that there was more that was on that hit list of all of the headline type features that got changed. What have we missed?
There's a bunch of them. There's the OpenStreetMap API, but that is kind of a quirky feature that I don't think everybody would use. Draggable pins have returned, which is something that was gone for an entire version. So if you drop a pin, you can now just long press on that and it will follow your finger around and you can drop that back. So that's something that people said, why is it gone? When is this coming back? So that is finally back.
And
very nice.
They're really using it. Huh. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that I actually used that once already, forgetting that it had gone, to find my parking spot and route to it in, the Apple Maps.
Yeah. Yeah, it should have come back sooner, but it was actually more difficult than you would expect. So
I kind of imagined because you had to totally redo the maps in both 4 and 5, if I remember.
It was in 5, so I came out with the new offline maps in 5 as well as brought back Google Maps. So there's actually 3 separate mapping frameworks that are in Cachly, and so you have to do things 3 times based on which map you're using. They're not all compatible with the same programming.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to make things extra complicated.
Exactly.
And then they'll change something, and you have to go through and spend, a month fixing the calls to that API.
Yeah, or 2 of them work, and then the third one is really buggy for some reason. You don't know why something isn't working. So,
have you ever thought about just eliminating the maps and just having random sketches on instead,
or just the compass? And people
just the compass. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
just
it can be called compass caching.
Oh man, what was that? I'm trying to remember the name of the app that we used to use way back on like the iPhone 3G. That literally was just the compass, and I can't for the life of me remember what that was called. I want to say it was like Beagle.
You should. Oh, there was one. Yeah, you should just take away the arrow and just have you're 16 feet away.
That's true.
Yeah, like a reverse geocache, but without the direction.
It could be like its own mystery cache.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Somewhat right and 16 feet away.
Oh, we should stop talking about this because someone might actually try it.
Yeah.
He'll put that in there. April Fool's joke.
That's a good idea. I have the thing for Christmas.
I was just going to say, you have not removed Christmas, have you?
No, I've enhanced it and made it a better looking Santa. So
Christmas is even better in Cashly 6.
No, it was actually in Cashly 5 and it happened on Christmas, but maybe for this next year, something cool will happen. We'll see.
But does Christmas come early?
No, not in Cashly.
Darn.
Yeah.
If I can set my phone's date to December 25th, can I do it now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it will happen. Yeah. I don't think I can outsmart the system date and time.
What about offline lists? I know you did a lot there.
Yeah. So offline lists filtering, there's about 50 different filters. So if you have lots of offline caches that you're using, you can, sorry, I got distracted by that person putting something on the screen. Yeah. So you can compound different filters. You can, have multiple filters that you're applying to a list. And then in the new version, you can do certain things like you can say, if caches are in another list that is on Cashly, make them either show or hide. If they're in selected lists that you might choose, that's another condition. You can do log type. So if you want to search for all caches that have DNFs for whatever reason, you could show those, or you can invert that filter and do the opposite. So you could do DNF and they would find all caches that don't have a DNF log. So filtering an offline list, if people haven't tried it, is quite powerful. And you can also save templates in those filters. So you can apply the template to as many offline lists as you would like. So yeah, and then there's a couple other delete options for offline lists. If you want to delete all of your lists or just some selected lists, it's much quicker than just kind of the one-off delete that used to be in Cashly 5. So.
In Houston, Texas, Dave was nice enough to share his trackable code for us to test Cashly on the screen, but unfortunately, it seems to have distracted you a little too much. So, sorry about the shiny object.
I will have to try to scan it later.
It worked for me. I just had to make sure to not get the TB in the front.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get a chance to try it. I'm going to do it right there off the chat, see if it works.
I would imagine it will. You might have to play some games. It reminds me of scanning barcodes when the barcodes are too close together.
Yeah, your camera has to come into focus is the first step.
Yeah, it has to focus, and the extra characters will be a problem. But it worked for you, Chris?
Yep.
There you go. Ay. We are having quite the show tonight.
As you're holding it there and your hand is shaking, that little green box was following the text. So it did a good job.
Good.
Yeah, it's been working really well.
Shaking that much, I was exaggerating. It could be. I've had a little too much coffee today.
That's true. Starbucks is back open, right?
Yeah. We I don't know if we actually saw anything in the release notes, but was there any enhancement after 6.0 to the trackables? Because it does seem to have been working better in the updates.
You mean like in 6.0.1?
Yeah, exactly.
No, nothing has been enhanced. So perhaps in Apple's software, it has some sort of learning, like machine learning that's built in, because I do use some of the Apple APIs for the scanning. So that totally could be something that they have built in. And so the more you use it, the better it could scan.
That makes sense.
That's just a guess. I don't know. And Apple likes to keep those kind of things secret, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's deep in the back end of the scanning.
Yeah, no, that does make some sense. But no, it's been, the first weekend, and there's been at least 2, I think, updates to iOS since then as well. One of which gave us the faster timeout for Face ID with face masks.
Yeah, and they could easily be updating their software, not just like machine learning of your usage, but just enhancing the way that the scanning works.
Yeah, and I was just going to say they could have improved the results from the machine learning in those updates too.
Yeah, for sure.
Very interesting. It's a mystery that shall never be solved.
That's true. Apple's very secretive.
Uh-oh, we have a new request. Larger fonts on premium apps for us old folks was appreciated, plus all the additional map icons. And this comes from Team Demp again.
Yeah. So these were requests from my beta testers, and I think many users appreciate it. But yeah, if users were using larger fonts on their phone, the Apple Maps and I think Google Maps would respond to that, but my premium offline maps would still stay at smaller font sizes. So now it reacts to those changes dynamically. So you can change it, switch back to Cachly. It'll automatically update to larger font sizes. You can do bold, and it will bold some of those, street names, city names, country names, things like that. So just improvement with accessibility. So
yeah, and all that is set in the accessibility on the phone. It's not a setting in the
correct. It'll just happen automatically if you're having those settings already turned on your phone.
Okay, we're gonna go there. Caching Dead New York says Cachly would be so. Actually, he says Voodoo. I can't even pronounce that. It would be so much better if it was on Android.
Like only on Android and not on iOS anymore.
Right.
Is that a question?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. Well, that could be true. That could be a statement that we will never explore.
All you have to do is get an iOS emulator on your Android, and then you'll be able to download Cachly. It's easy.
That's true. Or you can just pick up a used iPhone off of eBay, and you don't even need a data connection, just Wi-Fi, and load on some offline caches, and you're good to go.
Or just pick one up on one of those refurb deals on Woot, or Amazon has a few of those showing up now and then. See, there's all kinds of ways to fix your problem caching to New York.
Now, you can get necessarily work on, say, an iPod. And I saw this week that, you can still buy an iPod.
Yeah, the iPod Touch is available, but I want to say the click wheel. No, the click wheel's gone, I think.
Click wheel's gone.
Yeah.
An iPod Touch is still available. If you connected that to an iPhone, it would pass GPS data to it. But I don't.
Yes, and I heard you can also tether those with some handheld GPS devices. I think there's a company called, I think, Bad Elf or something that makes a lot of those ones that have really good connectivity with iPhones.
Yeah, we used that at one point. I played with the Garmin one at one point, and that we did not have as good luck with. So not all Bluetooth receivers work well with iOS, but we've used the Bad Elf, and some of the really cheap ones actually worked in testing, and this is a while ago.
And I've never tested that myself, but one of my beta testers had one, and he said it worked quite well. So
when I believe that the last time I did testing on any of those GPSRs with any devices that didn't have a GPS was pre-Cachly.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago.
Quite a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
But 6 years ago.
Yeah, and we did a lot of testing on geocaching podcast because we were looking for all kinds of ways to get cheap receivers for like the kids that still had enough, and for bigger groups. Yeah, and at that point it was still quite the investment to get a data plan. So anything you could do to not have a cell phone.
Weren't people using like Pocket PCs or little Palm Pilots?
Pocket PCs were pretty awesome back then for doing a lot of this stuff, because you could do the field notes for a lot of those kind of power caching functions.
Yeah.
So you'd use that, and then like your GPS would route you to the cache, but you were using the Pocket PC. Palm was kind of already gone at that point, but you'd use another device to get the information off because, well, the 60 CSX, as awesome as it was, didn't do such a good job with like text. And then we got the the Colorado series. And that gave us the first paperless caching, but it totally sucked for power caching.
I've never tried to use a GPSR ever for caching.
You got to do it.
All I have of an actual GPS is an old one for my car. So that would probably be pretty difficult.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I've talked with so many people on the original Cache Maniac shows that was their introduction.
Mm-hmm.
They were loading the POIs or loading the waypoints and going to it, and they spent an eternity that first time just trying to figure out how to get to the cache and not drive to it.
Yeah, that was the problem. They would stick to roads.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, it's not a new problem. And then they had the Nuvi 500 series with Where I Go access. The Where I Go player. And that one actually had the mode switching so you could go into geocaching mode.
Interesting.
Not a good device. It was a great concept, but among other things, the battery did not last anywhere near long enough to make it work right.
Oh, that's a problem when you're going out in the woods and then it's dying.
Right. Well, but it's not designed for going out in the woods. It's designed for going from park to park, and you're driving your car in between. So they had an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Just didn't quite make it there.
Interesting.
And I have no idea how this applies to Cachly. So let's get back to Cachly. Okay, here's one. We had where was it? I think it was Team Demp saying that they like how quickly you respond to comments and really take those requests to heart. And we had an interesting one emailed to us. Dave Du said that he wants to know about why daily finds are not available in apps. So you actually had a conversation with him, and we've talked about it previously offline as well. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge of how this works. And you even mentioned problems with the total find count as well.
Yeah, so I think the problem is that it's not impossible, but it's how users are interpreting what their finds are. So for example, they might have submitted 10 draft find logs to the website. They might have a bunch of found pending logs that are saved locally in Cachly, and then they might have submitted a bunch of actual logs to the website as well. So you have to total all those, which isn't too hard, but it's the users, like I was telling you offline, that I had a user email me the other day about the total find count, and they had forgotten that they had a bunch of pending drafts on the website that were adding to their total. So they were 7 ahead of where they expected, but Cachly was totaling those drafts into their total find count. So if we did this feature, we would have to probably have some settings so that users could be very specific about what they were expecting to see there, and then it would be totally possible. It's not an impossible feature. The easiest thing would just be say only Cachly finds will be shown in the statistics for today's finds, and that'd be very simple. And we could probably just save those locally. We don't even have to make any requests to the API. So it's something that I would be happy to add, but need to figure out what users are expecting.
Yeah, it's not something that you can just drop in there. And I remember having conversations with the developer of Geosphere before that went away.
Yeah.
And originally when he put that functionality in, it was only on the logs that were saved on the device. So if you submitted the logs, your count went away. But one of the problems that he was having was a lot of us were logging kind of half and half at the time. And when you log on a GPS, there's no way to count that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of users who will still use Cachly and submit to the drafts on the website because they want to, save a record of it, but then they want to get on a real keyboard and type a really long log on their computer. So it is half and half, I think, for a lot of users still.
Yeah. It definitely is. It is a problem. And a lot of people don't necessarily keep it on the device, while a lot of people will keep it on the device. And I've seen a lot of them where they'll share the list back and forth, like at the table. Okay, did you get this one? Did you want to compare? So your position is off. So if you start counting and attaching it to that log somehow, like I think Cashly was doing that at one point, or not Cashly, Geosphere.
Yeah.
Then you've now inserted a cache in between, and your accounts are all off, and it's going to be in the wrong order.
Yeah, the order thing is something that people are really sticklers on. They really want it to be in the correct order. So if Cashly screws up, there's frustration. Then this is out of order of my fines. But
so yeah, it seems like it's a fairly simple concept, but one of those things that as you actually start to work on it gets increasingly more difficult, to the point of almost paralysis, I guess.
Yeah. So it's on the request list. Something I will explore in the future, but not slated for any sort of upcoming release.
Well, you can add my vote to it because it's one of those features I'd love to have, but I do understand how challenging it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm one of those people who loves to have the caches in the right order. So if if I forget to log something and have to go back and log it, I'll put the usually correct time, or at least something close to in there.
Yeah.
And if it's out of order, I don't like it. I understand it. I just don't like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's many, many other people like you that would not appreciate it.
Well, there's probably a lot of people who are much worse than I am.
That's true.
I'm not that big a stickler about it. All right. I don't want to let you go before we ask you the very, very impossible question of what's on the board to get done aside from the daily fine counts, which may not ever happen.
You talking about for upcoming releases?
For upcoming releases, either for little maintenance releases or maybe stuff that you've got kind of brewing in 7.0. Get a little tease on that.
Yeah. So for upcoming maintenance releases, the trackable API requires a log message when you log a trackable. And previously, I could just put a space in there if somebody didn't type in text. And that's no longer allowed by the API. So I put a nice message in that says trackable by Cashly, or tracked by Cashly, logged by Cashly, something like that. And recently, users have not liked that, or some users have not appreciated that I was auto-inserting some text, which can be understandable. And you can use a text template to overwrite that. But in the next bug fix release, I'm going to add a way to easily be able to add your own default and change that so that won't be a problem for anybody. But as far as 7.0, not thinking as far as 7.0 right now. I'm just thinking 6.1 will be some bigger features. And definitely the proximity alert. A lot of people have been wanting that. It'll be off by default, so the people that hate it don't need to worry. But a lot of people have requested that, so I promise that I will add that. And dark mode, I'm going to add. And yeah, I won't mention any other ones because there's quite a few on the list. But going to try to not make this release 6.1 as long as some of the previous ones. So get just a couple big features, fix a lot of bugs, and get it into the hands of Cashly users. So
see, now I'm really excited because I like the concept of a night mode.
Yeah,
so dark mode really has me excited.
Yeah, and I'm not sure so the interface would change to dark, similar to other apps. But then when it comes to maps, that's going to be a whole other job of designing dark maps. So not sure if I will include that at the same time as dark mode or not.
Doesn't Apple and Google have a dark mode for the street maps? Or am I mistaken on that?
They have dark modes for their maps. Like at nighttime, it will switch.
Right.
And I believe if you just turn on dark mode on your phone, it will switch right then as well.
Yeah, so at least those are done. But yeah, getting into maps from other sources, I don't imagine.
Yeah, because
I'll really do.
for my offline maps, it's all styles that I've designed. So I could easily do it, but it would be a lot more work and making sure dark colors work together and things like that. So
yeah, but like satellite views, I don't imagine you could do anything with it because that's an image essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
You'd have to like invert it, which would be terrible.
Yeah, that would look really bad. So yeah, I wouldn't be messing with any maps like that or any like tile-based maps. It would just be my own premium offline maps.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds awesome because, for those of us who love night caching, and me who doesn't actually do it, it doesn't really matter. But I love to go night caching. It would be amazing to have Cachely not be blaring in my face with the really bright maps.
Well, you could use the map update and the proximity alert if you're going to do stuff at night, because you might just walk right past a cache.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to walk past a cache. Among other things, I go out with too many other people when I do the night caching. Makes it kind of hard because someone's always going to remember.
That's true.
Until they don't. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and I am so looking forward to playing with Cachely much, much more in the future.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And next week, we've got a awesome randomized show coming up, so make sure to get your comments and questions in for that one. That's coming up next week. Email us anything that you might have to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com.
And of course, you can always check the website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearheads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes, because we love hearing from our listeners. So leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearheads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2020 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cache with a Cachemaniac.